Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory bolt action video. I've got a handy little tip for you guys today on how you can use one army to represent 5 different Axis powers on the battlefield. This is what I call my generic Axis army, and I found it to be really cool for when you want to try out some of those minor nations. Maybe a bit of a Hungarian fan or Bulgarian fan, you want to try out one of those different nations, but you're not quite ready to commit to all the different metal models. You want a bit of plastic models so you can build them however you want. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then check out this video because it's going to be how you can build a German army in such a way that it's generic enough that you can use it for any of the Axis powers. So the 5 Axis powers that you can use this army to represent in your game of bolt action is, of course, you've got the Germans, then you've got the Finnish, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, and last but certainly not least, you've got the Hungarians. So the way that we're going to build this army in such a generic way that it can be used to represent the different Axis factions is we're going to be using the Winter German models. Now I got the Winter German starter army, highly recommended. It comes with all the infantry you're ever going to need and a couple of vehicles, which is pretty cool. And what you want to do is you want to take a look at these German infantry, right? Because at the end of the day, they're basically just German infantry wearing greatcoats. That's it. They've not got any of the unique camouflage smocks. They've not got any of the unique helmets of like the Fallschirmjäger or anything like that. They're very, very generic looking. And for our purposes, that's absolutely perfect because essentially the vibe that we're going to go for with this army is that it's going to be if a German guy or an Axis soldier is a guy in a greatcoat with a German helmet, he can pretty much be from any country. Now, some of you will say, oh, but the Romanians had like unique helmets and that the Hungarians had a unique colour of their uniform and all that kind of stuff. True, not going to deny that. But that's why we've painted them in this pretty generic, and I like to call it sort of Hollywood style uniform. We've gone for just a classic German grey. Now, the colour that I went for here, I actually used a Citadel colour. I went for Mechanicus grey. And the reason I did that is I thought, you know what? In the movies, you always see Germans in grey greatcoats. That's it. You always see Axis powers in grey greatcoats. And yeah, and you always see vehicles, German grey, that's kind of how it was, right? But realistically, you never had a Tiger tank in Panzer grey. And realistically, a lot of these uniforms would actually probably be a slightly different colour of grey. They would be more sort of a green grey and stuff like that. But what I decided to do is sort of go for a Hollywood-style, generic World War II bad guy vibe for this army. And that's why we've gone for this generic German grey colour scheme and we've gone for these greatcoats. You see, at the end of the day, guys, especially at the end of the war, when the Germans were having to seriously resupply their allies, after the Hungarian Second Army had been absolutely beansed in Stalingrad, after the Romanians had just taken horrendous levels of casualties, at the end of the day, the Germans ended up actually providing these guys with a lot of equipment and rebuilding them, and essentially they took them over. The Germans basically said, look, your officers are useless, we're going to take over. If we're going to rebuild your army from the ground up, then we're going to have the bloody say in what it does. So that's why when you look at these, you'll see like they're all wearing the German grey greatcoat. They've all got the standard sort of German hat. And I've gone for that just to represent, like, look, this could very well represent a late war Hungarian army, the Hungarian Second Army when it got reformed, could very well represent them. Now, if an extra little detail, now many players may not notice this, but I went the extra mile because obviously I didn't want to just say, look, it's a German guy in a greatcoat and a helmet. Look, now it can be any faction I want. I decided to go a little bit further than that. All right. And if you actually take a look at the equipment that I've given these guys, if you take a look, all of the riflemen, for example, have got the Kar 98. I've not given any of them the semi-automatic version, okay, the Gewehr 43. And if you look over here, the majority of my guys of my assault weapons are like MP40s. And if we come and have a look at all of the machine guns that we've got, I haven't gone for any MG42s. I've gone all for MG34s. Now, the reason for that is I'm thinking if this is going to be even though this is a late war army, you'd expect people to have more MG42s and stuff like that. My thinking is that if I want to use this as a Bulgarian force or a Hungarian force or a Romanian force that's been rebuilt by the Germans, well, the Germans are going to keep all the best gear for themselves, aren't they? They're only going to give out the second line gear to their allies. So that's why the squad sergeants have got MP40s. I've got a few. Don't get me wrong. I've got a few STGs in there, a few Panzerfaust, I've got plenty of, I've got an MG42 at the back there, for example. But the point is I've gone for mostly bolt action rifles, MP40s, and MG34s, because my thinking is, look, the Germans, when they're going to rebuild the Hungarians, they'll be like, okay, you guys can have the Kar 98s, we're going to keep the Gewehr 43s for ourselves. You guys can have some MG34s, we'll keep the MG42s for ourselves. You guys can have some MP40s, we're going to keep most of the SDGs for ourselves. So when I'm playing this army, if I ever decide to play it, and this fits in with the rules as well on bolt action winters when you're putting your squads together. Whenever I'm playing this as like the Romanians or the Hungarians, it's like, okay, well, my squad sergeants are going to have MP40s. When I play it as the Germans, my squad sergeants have got STG 44s. So that's what I think. Now, these guys could, like I said, they could easily, you might be thinking, oh, greatcoats all over the place. Surely greatcoats should only be for winter. Yeah, I mean, strictly speaking, you could argue that. But to be honest, guys, when you zoom out, when we have a look out here, we've had a nice close-up look. Let's have a little zoom out. When you take a look, it just looks like grey infantry. It's only when you get up close and personal you're going to notice that they've all got greatcoats. And then you're going to notice that they've all got the bolt actions and none of them have got the semi-automatics. It really is. It really does allow you to just sort of collect a very generic force. And I've played this army against, must be 24 people, and no one has mentioned the fact that I've got a grey tiger, when technically grey tigers were never produced in Tiger Grey and Panzer Grey. No one's mentioned it. And my point is that it allows you... Now, of course, what I would say is, this is a German army at heart, and, you should be thinking, that primarily this is a German force. But if you're someone that is like, I know I'm going to play Germans, I know I'm going to play them, they're the faction I want to go for, but I know at some point I'm going to want to dabble with the Hungarians, but I don't want to have to go and pick up a whole new army to do it. But I might want to go to a little local event with them as Hungarians once, or I want to go to a local event as them as Romanians for once. And in that case, I'd be like, this is perfect for that. If you're going to use them 9 times out of 10 as Germans, that's great. But for those times you want to just, dabble with a different little minor Axis power, just to give them a go, see what the rules are like, fresh the palette from playing Germans day in, day out. This is the way of doing it, in my opinion. It allows you to collect 5 armies in one. You're going to use Germans most of the time anyway, because obviously they've got all the best gear and the best rules and everything. But sometimes it is fun to play as a minor power. So there we go, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm sure some people will have an issue with it because it isn't super historical, and I get that. I know I'm a 40k player at heart, and so I know there's going to be a lot of historical people there saying, oh, this is typical 40k player behaviour. I get that, and I respect that. But for me, bolt action is very much my fun. It's my second game. And so I find that this is a great way for me to be able to play lots of different Axis powers when I'm not playing 40k. It's just a nice little way of doing it. If I was a new player getting into bolt action, this is what I would recommend to them. Get this army, paint it up like this, use those weapon options that I've talked about, and that way you can try multiple different Axis factions before you decide which one you really want to go into. Anyway, there we go. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. If you have, please consider giving it a like and subscribing and all that kind of good stuff. And if you really enjoyed today's video, then please consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.